Gentleman from Texas, Mr. McCaul.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Madam Secretary, Director Leiter. November 2009, I attended the Fort Hood Memorial Service just north of my district in Texas, and saw the 13 combat boots, the rifles, talked to the soldiers who had been shot that day. They described how the Major Hassan said Allahu Akbar. It's very, very dramatic. Some said that wasn't an act of terrorism. I said it was. I think it's the deadliest attack we've had since 9/11. Since that time, the Senate has issued a report called a ticking time bomb. In that report, it talks about how the Joint Terrorism Task Force in San Diego had information about Major Hassan's contacts with what you described, Director, as the most dangerous threat to the United States security, and that's Al-Awlaki. Unfortunately, that information was not shared with the commander, General Cohn at Fort Hood, who I talked to, and I said, wouldn't you like to have known that? When the attack took place, the FBI agent was quoted as saying, you know who that is, that's our boy. That's our boy. Can you tell this committee and the American people what happened that day and what Major Hassan's connections are to the terrorist community?
Congressman, to begin, I would just say at NCTC, within about 48 hours of that attack, we designated that a terrorist attack in what we call the Worldwide Incident Tracking System. So from our perspective, it was, as soon as we had the initial indication of the motivation, we counted it as a terrorist attack. It can always change back, but in this case it hasn't. With respect to his connection to Al-Awlaki and AQAP, and I want to be very careful here because obviously this is still a case for prosecution, but we've said publicly it looks to us like inspiration rather than direction. Finally, your question about what happened, I want to be careful not to speak for either Director Mueller or the Department of Defense. I think they said quite clearly at the time that information was not shared effectively between the FBI and Department of Defense. They have taken remedial action to address some of that, and I know for NCTC's part, since then we have worked with the FBI to produce improved training materials and training for field officers. So there really is no question for the next special agent when he's investigating a case that he will recognize the telltale signs of radicalization and moving towards mobilization and not just convey that to the Department of Defense, but probably be more aggressive in following that up.
I mean, I think the American people, it's hard to understand. You know, you got to, we can talk about infiltration in the military, what the threat is there, but it's hard for the average citizen to understand how the FBI could have this kind of information, that you have a major, the biggest installation in the United States, in contact with one of the biggest threats to the security of the United States, and yet that information is not shared at all. I think that's a major breakdown, and I hope, and I know that's not totally within your purview and your jurisdiction, but I sure hope we can fix that problem.
Congressman, I'll say, again, I do know that the Department of Defense and FBI now have a much tighter relationship, so that information is shared. During the investigation, it was shared with a Department of Defense agent on the JTTF, but not shared back to the Army. We have also since then expanded NCTC's access to some of that granular information that was the basis for the investigation. So NCTC can help to fill those gaps and make sure the information is properly shared.
Okay. Madam Secretary, you were quoted in the Hill newspaper saying that with respect to the border, that the border is, it's inaccurate to state that the border is out of control. We had a briefing with Border Patrol. They said that about 44% of the border is under operational control. As you well know, the killings, the violence going on, coming from Arizona, me coming from Texas, I would say my constituents do view it as an out-of-control state. The special interest aliens has increased by 37%. Those are persons coming from countries that may have potentially terrorist influences. There's recently a potential terrorist that was found in the trunk of a car, paid a Mexican cartel drug dealer $5,000 to sneak across the border. Could you just clarify the statement in terms of your statement that it's not out of control down there?
Oh, absolutely. First, and I will give you the full talk that I gave at UTEP. But the border, thanks in part to the bipartisan efforts of the Congress, has more manpower, technology, and infrastructure than ever before. And the numbers in terms of seizures that need to go up are going up, and the numbers in terms of illegal immigration are going way down. And the communities that are along the border, San Diego, Nogales, El Paso, and so forth, are among, in terms of violent crime statistics, are among the safest in the United States. And so what I was saying at that, from which I'm quoted in part, was to the cartels in Mexico, don't bring your violence you're doing in Juarez, et cetera, over into the United States. You will be met with an overwhelming response. It is true that there are crimes on this side of the border. The murder of a rancher in Arizona is one example, but it is inaccurate to extrapolate from that to say that the entire border is out of control. With respect to the 44% number, I think it's important to recognize that operational control is a very narrow term of art in Border Patrol lingo. Basically, it is restricted to where you have individual agents located. It does not take into account infrastructure. It does not take into account technology, which is a force multiplier, as you know. So that I think it would be inaccurate to take from that number or that phrase to say, well, that means the other percentage of the border, 56%, is out of control. That would not be accurate.
Gentleman's time